Leandrin is written as a character to be despised in the books, and as that character, she's effective, right? But as a result, no one likes Leandrin. No one came into wanting to see the Wheel of Time series adaptation thinking, I really hope they expand Leandrin as a character. Leandrin is getting huge amounts of screen time. More screen time than Rand! What is going on here? It's like, first I was ticked off that they were giving more screen time to the girls than the guys. So Perrin and Matt and Rand are barely even there. This is very much the Egwene, Nynaeve, Moraine show. Front and center, right? And so that annoyed me enough. And now they're devoting huge amounts of time to Leandrin, exploring her character, developing her out. And we're barely given lip service to Rand and Matt. And I'm just thinking, what is this? Why? Welcome back to The Watch, and we are up to Wheel of Time Season 2, Episode 3. As always, I'm joined by my lovely wife, the lady. How are you?
Yep, I'm doing good.
You're doing good?
Third one in 2 days, right?
Yes. And I'm struck by a couple of things at the end of this episode. And one is, I guess, the idea of adaptation. Because obviously, you need to change some things when changing medium, okay? And so there are some things that need to be condensed, even need to be cut when adapting a book to a TV show. What's really striking me about this so far is how unnecessary so many of the changes are. Like drastically so, where they say that, we have to cut things because the book's too big, so we have to leave out things, and then you might have to condense things. And there are some things in this episode that's becoming more apparent that they are combining and condensing, but then there are things that they are adding in that aren't even needed. Like the whole arc with Rand so far is bizarre. He's just been... they barely featured him in episode 1. Episode 2, you finally find out that he's trying to meet Logain. And here in episode 3, he meets Logain and achieves nothing. Like, it is just wading water, not going anywhere, spinning wheels and achieving nothing. And if time was such a delicate thing in this series to fit in book material, why are you making up bullcrap stuff that aren't in the books and progressing the story not one bit? It's frustrating. So far. Any thoughts to share on that?
So they did try to keep a couple of things accurate here and there, but they just added in unnecessary filler.
Yes.
Where, like, a lot of the things were quite concise and quick in the book. Mm-hmm. And instead of keeping it that way,
they have expanded it out beyond necessary.
And then add extra and extra and extra stuff that just aren't needed.
Yeah, they spend a whole episode on Nynaeve's test through the arches. What was up? Why are you expanding that so much and dragging it out? And you have this whole thing about, oh no, Nynaeve, she's trapped in that. All right, so we will get to, the bit-by-bit breakdown. This is more overview, but even with the overview, we have to do specifics. So, of course, spoilers, Instead of Nynaeve succeeding the trial, as in the books, she gets trapped in the last arch, and they think she's dead, and they drag it out for the whole episode. Obviously they want to do it because they're thinking, this will be an engaging episode. But again, what's really frustrating is that they're expanding a rather small section of the book to a whole episode, and they've cut all this other really cool stuff that they could have done and explored. And then even if you want to disregard the books and judge it on its own merits, it feels like unnecessary filler that they're just dragging things out and barely anything is being achieved. Like, what was achieved in this episode? There's a couple of things, but what can you remember?
Matt's loose.
Matt finally got free. Like, they teased that for 3 full episodes and is finally free. And how does it achieve it? Leandrin just like, you can go now.
I'm done with you.
I'm done with you. See you go. Really anticlimactic. And then Matt gets free. and he doesn't even know where to go. Like, in terms of this show having no direction and feeling bloody lost, that is encapsulated by Matt's, decrees like, say, I don't know what to do. Yeah, a lot of the characters don't seem to know what to do. That's one of the biggest failings of the show so far, is that there is no direction. You see no goal. You're not invested in where the characters are going. And as a result, you're just bored and you're watching characters do things because they're doing things. And what just a massive letdown compared to what they had, the material they had. And they could have done it, by the way. So, yes, season 1 really screwed the pooch in a lot of ways, right? But they've already shown that they're willing to just kind of ignore things, Loyal, he's fine, he's perfectly fine. And so you could have done some easy repairs at the beginning of this season just by saying Moiraine's actually shielded instead of stilled, and the shield is wearing off and she is slowly peeling apart a weave at a time to break free of the shield. Rand says, tell him that I'm dead, right? And as he's leaving, he accidentally runs into, Matt, Matt's not there, Perrin, all right? Something like that, to lead them back into Faldara. Is it Faldara? Yeah, I think it's Faldara. And then have the book play out like it was normal, right? Matt wouldn't be there, so that's one thing you got to deal with, but you can still have, oh, holy crap, what do you mean? The horn was stolen. Paran Fain was here, he's already left. Oh, we got to go after him. Holy crap, and so you have Rand, and have a desperate kind of sense of purpose where Rand is going off with Perrin after the horn. And then, as they're traveling down from Faldara, they run into Matt, because Matt, he got free from, the Aes Sedai. Or, by the way, if you're starting this season from scratch, you don't even have to say that he he found out the Reds were after him, and that's what made him flee Tar Valon, and he started legging it upways because he couldn't use the ways, and he runs into them halfway, and he finds out the horn, oh, so-and-so has the dagger, and they're after the dagger and the horn, and they could have done this in episode 1 to course correct, and then they could actually start playing out the book as it was, and it would be so much better. So to say that it was impossible because of how they screwed up season 1 to course correct and get the story back more in line to what season 2, what the second book is, or season, you could have done it. It wouldn't have been hard, all right? And so the fact that they have diverted so drastically from the books is not because they screwed up in season 1 so much, because they could have cross-corrected. This is all intentional. This is all just an indulgent, playtime for the showrunner to do his own story, because he's not interested in adapting the books. He's more interested in making a show that has his own type of message. By the way, he's said this. He's absolutely said this. Rafe Judkins has come out and says, absolutely, he'll be injecting his feminist ideals into this show, as well as, having it's a ground for him to explore polyamorous relationships, all that stuff. He's not interested in adapting the show. He's interested in doing his own show, using someone else's work and legacy as the vehicle for it. So that's really something that got emphasized to me even more, because I'm watching this and I'm thinking, this is just not Wheel of Time. Where are we going? What are we actually achieving? Did you have any overview kind of thoughts for the episode?
Not so much overview. I usually have
more specifics.
Things, yes.
Yeah, and we will get to specifics. And so that's kind of the overview thoughts for me, though there are some crimes that I really have to, point out. They killed Uno. Uno's
yes.
Dead.
I was going to get to that in the specifics, yes.
We will get to this.
He was kind of dying last time and they brought him back, but this one's pretty sure you can't bring him back from that one.
You can't bring him back from this one. And, adaptation argument. He's a minor character, probably, when I say, would it drag down the series by having a minor character be dragged along through the entire series? Well, they're doing it in a big way with Liandrin. Liandrin is getting huge amounts of screen time. More screen time than Rand! What is going on here? It's first I was ticked off that they were giving more screen time to the girls than the guys. So Perrin and Matt and Rand are barely even there. This is very much the Egwene, Nynaeve, Moiraine show. Front and center, right? And so that annoyed me enough that they were just diverting so much attention to the female characters who are more side characters, that they do become more prominent as the story progresses. And now they're devoting huge amounts of time to Liandrin, exploring her character, developing her out, and we're barely given lip service to Rand and Matt. And I'm just thinking, what is this? Why? it's starting to feel like, well, this is a female character, and they want to give highlights to the female characters, and these male characters. Well, this isn't about them, is it? And so they spend all this time on a side character to bring her into prominence. But one of the other side characters that actually I was enjoying Uno. He was one of the few characters that was done somewhat accurately, right? And so the thing that leads up to his death, I was like, holy crap, Uno's the only one with balls among them. I was thinking, why aren't you giving Perrin this thing? And so we will get to it in the section by section. Let you know now, they run the Seanchan attack, and then they are forcing everyone to do the oaths, right? And I was thinking, well, this is interesting because none of the main characters were ever in a situation where they were forced to do the oaths. Would they actually take the Seanchan oath? And I was like, I don't think they would. And the Shynarans, holy crap, no, they would never. Death above a false oath any day of the week for the Shynarans. And Uno is the only one that is like, screw you, and he spits at them. It's like, yeah, hell yeah, Uno. And then he gets executed for it. I'm like, you are doing something really cool with him. And like, what could they have done to save Uno's life? And if you're going to say that this is too cheap, they do it anyway to save Perrin. Have the wolves attack. They have Elias there with them when they arrive in the town, and then he goes off on his own. And so Elias is free. He has an army of wolves at his beck and command, and he could summon them to save everyone while they're kneeling at the Seanchan. And just like, oh no, that would be too Deus Ex Machina, too kiffy. They do it anyway to save Perrin just a bit later on in the episode. But no, they don't want to save Uno, and so they kill off one of the cooler characters, and then they save Perrin anyway later on. And so it frustrated the hell out of me. Uno is awesome. Uno stays in the book series. Does he even die?
Maybe in like the last book, but I can't even remember that happening.
There's a great arc where he meets up with Nynaeve and becomes her like sworn guard and everything like that. And Nynaeve hates swearing, and so Uno is constantly trying to stop himself from swearing, and he constantly like, and his tongue gets tied. And he's a really charming, fun character, no nonsense. He will serve Aes Sedai, he's tough and cool, and they killed him off to give more screen time to Leandrin, of all people. Friggin' hell, this show. And so, as a big fan of the books, this show continues to be a desecration of the source material. And if you were to try and separate and judge it on its own merits, it's a meandering, boring show so far, with only a couple of little hints of, hey, that wasn't half bad. And look, there are one or two little things here and there. I was like, okay, they did that one all right. I can absolutely acknowledge that. But overall, it's barely going anywhere, and the lack of direction and purpose makes you completely checked out. I'm not invested in anything. Like, what's actually going on? What are they trying to achieve? Right? Rand doesn't even know now. He's like, everything he tried to achieve in those whole 3 episodes amounts to nothing. Matt doesn't know where he's going, and Perrin is free and probably has no idea what to do now as well. Where is the direction? Holy crap. Again, if they just follow the books, episode 1 could have been the whole thing where he comes back, the horn is gone, and they're chasing after the one. They get straight into the epic chase with Paran Fain, right? And then it could end with Rand accidentally slipping into the other world. And that would be a cool, really suspenseful end. And interspersed with that, you could have the girls traveling down the river with the Aes Sedai, learning some of the things, and have that interaction between her and Siwan, Nynaeve and Siwan. And so there's episode 1 that you could have done. Episode 2, Rand is in the other world with Huron, and that's when he meets Selene. And they actually have the introduction of Selene, and that's a really significant episode. Will they get back? He finally gets back. They're in a different location, but now they're ahead of Paran Fain, and then Rand gets the horn. Okay, but then he has to run away, and it's like, where can we go? We have to go to Cairhien, and they escape to Cairhien. Episode 2 already, we would have achieved so much. And in episode 2, the girls arrive in the White Tower, and Nynaeve is sent through the archers right away. By episode 2, we would have already reached certain plot points that they have barely even passed by episode 3 in this bullcrap useless adaptation, which is Nynaeve going through the archers, right? And then episode 3 would have been the Great Cairhien, an episode where Rand is dealing with the game of houses and all this crap and figuring out what to do. Maybe he meets, do you think they're even going to bring back Tom Maryland?
So hard to tell. You'd think they would have to, but they barely even acknowledged further that Tom's gone. Like, they haven't even brought him back up again.
Yeah.
It's just like, Tom died, and they moved on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in episode 3, actually, yes, it seems like Tom is dead now. I don't know if he'll come back.
Everybody
By the
else
way,
does.
His adaptation was dog crap anyway, so I'm not going to miss this version of Tom. But Tom, he is a significant character. And so then what they could have done with episode 3, this is when the girls, well, they leave the tower for a certain reason. I don't even know if they're going to... This isn't spoilers for the show because they're so divorced from what's happening, what should be happening in the books. And in episode 3, Rand meets up again with the Chainarans. They finally meet and they have to figure out how... Then there's the misdirect of... Paranfane is in Kyrian, but he's went through the ways and they can't go through the ways. And what are they going to do? And it ends with Rand trying to use one of the portal stones and a big climactic ending there. And already, that's just 3 episodes. This show would not be hard to adapt. He's saying, could you do better? Yes, I could. I'm a writer. I know about pacing and structure and fitting in and how much you fit in certain timeline, anything like that. And looking at the structure of book 2, just in 3 episodes, we could easily have covered what they cut from the book, and we would have pushed further on in the story, than where they currently are, achieved so much more. There would be a great sense of purpose, would be far more accurate to the book, and what they have in contrast in this show is just meandering, boring, lost, undirected kind of characters don't know what they're doing slop. So here we are, episode 3 of Wheel of Time. Let's get to a scene-by-scene breakdown then, shall we?
We had to get there eventually.
We will. Okay, so we open up with Nynaeve trying to go through the pillars. And I was wondering, okay, are they going to be true to the books?
They introduced it almost the same.
Yes. In actual fact, the introduction and the lines were pretty darn close to the books. And I remember I have a note saying, wow, when they actually copy the books, it's doing pretty good. This is one of the few good things. It was the Aes Sedai here give lines right out of the book about, the tests, and it's actually working well. It builds up suspense as a result.
There was only one part of it that I thought, they've kind of gone off a little bit there when she says, how much you share is up to you, when basically they say, this is for you and you alone. You don't talk about it to anybody else. But then afterwards, when she tries talking about it, they're like, oh, no, don't talk about it. And so they kind of backtrack a little bit there of what they've already said. But for the most part, the introduction to it and things was fairly accurate. They do have her remove her dress.
Well, in the books, she has to remove everything.
Yes.
And so, look, they could have done it modestly, in all honesty, and it would have made Nynaeve feel a bit more vulnerable in terms of going in. And there's a reason why, it's in the book like that. And so, it's not a huge...
so it was something that I could kind of let go, leave it, and it wasn't too big of a problem. But then the tests start happening.
Yes, and so in the books, the 3 tests that Nynaeve faces is, first she just ends up fighting...
Agonor, one of the Forsaken.
Yep,
and I think maybe some... Yeah, and so she uses the power while in the arch, and she...
And that wasn't,
you're not supposed to be able to.
Yeah, and so Nynaeve actually has the ability to use the one power in the arches, which is a bit, hang on. And when she comes out, weren't the Aes Sedai that was a little odd. I felt a weird...
They're there was stuff going on. What happened? And she explained, and they're like, you shouldn't be able to use the one power. We don't tell them not to use power because you shouldn't be able to. From now on, girl, don't use the power.
But instead, all right, so that was the first one in the book. And the second one in the book was she returns to Emond's Field and there's an awful wisdom that's basically punishing everyone, and she's a pretty evil person, and Nynaeve is then tempted to stay to try and fix things and so they kind of have a similar yet not. So the second test, we'll get to there in the scene by scene.
It's close enough, the second one.
The third one is completely different and they do a bait and switch.
Yes.
Let's get to it chronologically. So here is the first test instead, and instead she returns to Emond's Field as the daughter of her father, and she has blood on her hands for some reason. Don't know what that was.
Well, no, it was a foreshadowing for the herbs that were used in the next test, that they were deadly.
Yeah.
And so she was holding some, and he's like, remember, red is death. And so it foreshadows the herbs that were being fed to the Emond's Fielders later.
Well, they're also hanging a lantern on her not joining, because they're now starting to hint something that Nynaeve would never bloody do, her joining the Red Archer. And so when she goes through the third archway, do you remember she's wearing the red dress in the flashes and stuff?
Yes, but we're doing the first one first.
Yeah.
Right?
But if he said red is death, which I missed, that's like the archers trying to tell her, don't follow the red, don't follow the red. And so they're actually intentionally making a bigger thing. Nynaeve would never bloody join the red. No, none. Like, talk about
She was always only ever going to go for the one archer.
Yeah.
Just by her personality and passions.
So this next thing is a small thing, and in isolation wouldn't have bothered me, but it's just the repeated, and especially Wheel of Time. Like, it became really stark in Wheel of Time episode 5 when the setup was perfectly in line for Perrin to save Egwene. Egwene was tied in a chair, Perrin got free, and they were so pathetic that a woman cannot save a man in current day, right? They have Egwene magically teleport out of her bands to then save Perrin, and they contradicted reality to make sure Perrin couldn't save Egwene. And here, right, who's going to save who, do you think? Well, you've seen this already. So there are bad guys that are here. And
but mind you, they had done this setup before about her father teaching her tracking and things like that, and that they were dead. And one of the things about the archers is once they're supposed to represent what was, what is, and what could be, right? And so this is a more accurate depiction of what was than in the book. And so I could kind of let it go on that premise.
Oh, yeah, that premise.
And so that was okay.
It's the minor specific thing. So what I'm talking about here is the bad guys are about to appear, okay, and they shoot, and it's Nynaeve that saves her dad, not her dad that saves Nynaeve, right? And like, again, in isolation, wouldn't matter. But it's like, you would think the fatherly instinct, as soon as he sees a bad guy, would be to protect his daughter. But he's just standing there like a rock, and it's Nynaeve that will save her dad and push him into cover, when it's like, if you think that's not intentional, that absolutely is. And in isolation, wouldn't have meant a thing. But it's the accumulation of things, because now Nynaeve and her dad are about to be saved by someone.
Except this isn't the part that made it weird for me. Just before, she looks at her reflection and she's a little girl. Oh, how can a little girl drop a grown man to the ground?
Good point as well. And then, how do they get saved? Like, they're in trouble. Well, someone appears with a bow, and it's the mum. And so you actually didn't see the mum appear. So Nynaeve is getting injured and everything, and the mum appears and shoots him, just dashes mum out of the traditional instinctive kind of thing. If you are constructing the scene, is the person that's really worried about Nynaeve, wash your hands and everything like that, you shouldn't be holding this thing. That's a motherly kind of interaction and response. And the person who appears to save their loved ones would usually be the father, okay? And so it's stuff like this. It was absolutely intentional. They did this on purpose, where they switched the roles. And again, in isolation, if this was just by itself, wouldn't bother me. But this is a consistent thing in modern media, okay? Where they do not want men saving women, because somehow they think that depicts women as being weak, when in reality, it doesn't. It depicts men being strong, okay? And men should be taught to save women. That's a positive thing. And just because I see it so often, it gets to me more than it really should, because in isolation, like I said, it's one-off, whatever. Things can be different sometimes, but it's the consistency. And if you think the consistency isn't in this show, it absolutely is. You pay attention to how often men save women versus women saving men in this show, especially say versus the books. So anyway, that bothered me. And so the scene plays out with her going, you stay here for safety, the family getting tortured.
Mother stands guard, the father says goodbye.
Yep, and then the arch appears. And so I wasn't, I think this one is mostly okay, because in the first one in the books, the first arch in the books, the arch appearing is more of freedom, escape, you're in this battle, and so I would think it wouldn't be too hard to think of leaving as a type of freedom from, you getting attacked. It's literally retreat, escape. And so, yeah, all right, and then we come to the second arch. Second arch is somewhat similar in terms of that she returns to Emond's Field, but instead of having a wisdom who's awful, she's just giving people the wrong treatment. And I think this one is actually okay. You need to make it shorter, and so they don't want to spend too much time on explaining this awful wisdom is doing these bad things, everything like that, by just saying, there's a plague that they don't know how to treat.
And so they're just euthanizing everybody.
Yeah, and so I actually think this one is an acceptable and logical change.
Yep, I was fine with it as well.
I was fine with it. And the arch appearing makes a lot of sense because Nynaeve feels like she could help if she stayed. And so this one, like, the reason why it's also acceptable is that it clearly has ties to the original one, where she's returning to Emond's Field and her role as a wisdom is in question. And so they've created a new version of this that's more concise, but still achieves the same thing while still hitting the same, I guess, themes and setting. These are the types of changes you would hope to see throughout the whole show. If something is a bit too long, they'll condense it, but still keep it in the same setting, basically. So she leaves, and the last arch, right? In the books, it's completely different. Okay, so in the books, she's married with Lan, and they kind of do this in kind of when I say it's completely different, they fake you out. Okay, in the show, in the books they don't. She's married to Lan, and the arch appears, and she doesn't want to leave, and something really interesting happens. So in the books, Nynaeve doesn't go through the arch when it first appears. They do that here after the fake out, but they don't justify how the arch appears a second time in the show. In the books, it's explained very clearly, okay? Here, what they do is they fake out. She enters the arch, and then she has these flashes. She's wearing a red dress, so they're faking out that she's joining the Red Sisters, and she comes out. It's like, what happened? She can't remember. And so they're trying to say that she's out of the arch, and the fake out is that she's actually still in the arch. It became pretty darn obvious pretty quickly, honestly. They were about to do something that, what would your thoughts have been? Because Nynaeve, the fake out is that she completed the test, right? But then she said, if I have to turn my back on everyone I love, I'm not going to join you, Aes Sedai. I'm leaving, I'm gone. And I was like, that's a big change from the book. Not happy about change from the book, yet I literally have a note right here where it's like, I can't say that's out of her character. What were your thoughts on that one, Hannah?
Well, especially with they've lacked to give her motivation for wanting to be an Aes Sedai.
Yes!
And so, as far as they've created her character, I'm like, okay.
So far in the show, it actually makes a bit more sense.
That would throw a lot of the book stuff out. However, with how they presented her, with her having no reason to want to be Aes Sedai beyond babysitting a girl who was a grown woman, they've given her no reason. And so if they're like, well, you have to give up every, loyalty to everybody else, you can't help anybody, you can't go back and be, help if your town is suffering from a plague, you can't do it. She's like, well, forget it then, keep your ring, I'm going.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, that suits her personality, I suppose.
It actually does. And in terms of throwing out her story, I started to think about it as like, most of Nynaeve's story arc could remain the same, even if she never joined the White Tower. Because in the books, shortly after them going through the arches, the three girls leave the White Tower anyway. And so they could integrate that with her actually not choosing to be it. And they go on a bit of a journey.
Lots of stuff happens.
And look, it's minor spoilers, but this isn't really going to spoil anything because, they return to the tower. This shouldn't be a big thing. But even after returning to the tower after they leave shortly after anyway. And so if Nynaeve wasn't going to be an Aes Sedai, when they return to the tower, she just hangs out outside, still does the interactions with the characters and whatnot. And then they get a quest and Nynaeve is like, all right, I'm not tied to the tower. I'm going on this quest. Are you coming with me? And then they basically never return to the White Tower
until later.
And by that time, way later, Nynaeve could have changed her mind about joining us. And so this could have been a workable change. And she's supposed to be the
most powerful woman for, 1,000 years or something.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, let's see if we can make this work because we want your power.
Exactly.
And so they could have done it.
They could have done it. And this might have been one of the biggest changes that I would have been okay with if they had the balls to. It's so weird, right? They have the gall, and you could say balls, to make such drastic, huge changes, right? And then there's other changes that they were, oh no, that's too far for us. And then there are things in the book that they don't have the balls or courage to actually acknowledge and explore fully, like the gendered nature of the power. They're still avoiding that like the plague. Have you even mentioned, the word Saidin yet? Or even Saidar? They avoid calling it Saidin and Saidar, period. The only time Saidin is the male half, isn't it?
I believe so.
I think so, yeah. Is in the flashback with Luzther and Telemann. He mentions Sidene while he's speaking in another language. And so most people would just straight over. And I don't give that credit because they're not, if they're mentioning in another language that people are not catching, they're clearly avoiding mentioning Sidene and Sidar in casual conversation to let the audience know what it is.
And for those that will comment saying that it was in the shorts, we're not reviewing the shorts.
Mm-hmm.
This is the TV series only, the acted, not the shorts where they actually explain things reasonably well by comparison.
Exactly. A show should not have to rely on external media to make sense. If it does rely on that, that's a criticism. That's a flaw. That shows that the show has massive plot holes that it's not explaining in the show itself. And so they're still totally avoiding that. And like I said, there are things that they don't have the courage to be true to the books. And this is, as I mentioned, one of those changes where I think could have actually worked. And one of the other things that makes me be okay with it, it's very in line with a character. There are so many other things that are drastically contrary to a character, like her learning how to fight with swords. Do you know the character at all? It makes me sense that this kind of fake out, right, was suggested by a much more talented writer than what they generally have on it. Because Brandon Sanderson is still consulting now and then on the show where he can. So I've heard, okay? So I have heard. And whenever I see something that actually is cleverly done in adaptation, it's like, am I noticing you there, Brandon? Am I seeing you here? Because then there are ridiculous things that there's no way someone with his talent would ever, like, I've read Brandon so many of his books, right? Trust me, he is not nowhere near such an incompetent writer to do such drastically awful writing that this show has. But when suddenly there's an odd part of really good writing, I'm like, you know? And so this was interesting. I was like, okay, contrary to like awful changes like killing off Uno, this is one of those changes where I'm like, I'll give you a chance, but then it's a fake out anyway, it doesn't matter. And what's then frustrating is that they're dragging it out. They devote basically a whole episode. So this is where she meets Lan leaving, and it's like, well, this is clearly, she's still in the arches. And then, of course, the arch does appear shortly after. Right there it is right there. And she barely even hears it. She's like, well, what was that? To me, I thought that was a bit cheap, because what should have happened, she should have actually noticed it and then be conflicted about the choice. And then if they wanted to do her, not following through, and she kind of does this in the book, she doesn't want to go through and she wants to stay with Lan and the child and the love that she has. And then the archway disappears and she misses it. This is where the book and show diverts very drastically. Nynaeve recognizes her mistake in the book and she knows she has to get free, and she actually is the catalyst reason for making it appear again. She starts channeling, doing something instinctually, and she summons the arch with the power itself, almost breaking the thing to force herself free.
And so the Aes Sedai are still standing on the other side in the book and waiting. And they're like, oh, it's shut down. She's lost. And then it restarts, which it shouldn't be able to do without them being the ones channeling it.
Yeah.
But in this, they're just like, oh, she's dead. See you later. We're done.
And granted, she doesn't come out nearly as quickly as in the book, so you would think that
you'd have to give up eventually, yeah.
But what's the big stupid thing in the show? The arch just magically appears again. Like, for her, years later in this fake world, and for everyone else, it's a couple of days later. Why does it reappear? We saw Egwene trying to kickstart the archers, but it's not working. And when it does appear, she's so when Nynaeve comes back out of it, they're asleep. So it wasn't Egwene that kicked it off again. And that we see she channels inside the world, right? But she doesn't channel to summon the archers. She just channels to kill some Trollocs. That doesn't summon the arch. The arch just magically appears for no reason at all. And then she's like, oh, the way back will come but once. I better leave now. And now I can save my daughter. And it's not actually a test for her in the show, because now Lan is already dead, right? The arch appears as a means of escape to save her child now. That's not a test! That's me taking my child and saving her. Thank goodness the arch reappeared. It completely contradicts the purpose of the arch, where in the books, she actually has to choose to leave this perfect world. Lan is still alive, and she uses the power to call back the arch by her own raw strength, right? So why did they make the change? I mean, even if they wanted to drag out the entire episode, like, have Lan alive, have her remember, and have her choose to summon the Arch, and give her a valid reason of why she needs to go back to save Rand. She thinks Rand is dead, so they've screwed that over. Because originally, Nynaeve's purpose of joining the Aes Sedai was to protect Rand and, of course, Egwene and all the others, especially Rand, and revenge against Moraine, and to have power over the Aes Sedai and like control over them.
But she doesn't seem to actually hate Moraine passionately in this. And you're just kind of like, so what's your motivation? Why'd you go along with Egwene and go... Don't make sense to me. You could have survived quite fine out in the wild.
It could have been, if they just gave her a half-decent motivation to wanting to be an Aes Sedai in episode 2, she could have easily used that as the fuel to summon the Arch in episode 3 to not just have a Deus Ex Machina appear. Here's your second chance. That didn't happen to anyone else. But for you, it'll disappear because no reason is given. And so, she doesn't go through the Arch and she's trapped. And it's such a, then they drag it out because she remains trapped in there for ages, and the episode becomes a meandering filler, pointless thing where this didn't, you could have ended it right here. She exited, she still had the challenge, she's upset and everything like that, and you can continue the story on, all right? Nynaeve and the girls should be leaving the White Tower by now, in my opinion. I was expecting to happen in this episode, but it still hasn't. I'm wondering how many books... I thought they were trying to adapt book 2 and 3 in this season.
That's what I thought, but it's not even looking like they're getting through book 2 at this point.
Exactly, they're barely getting through book 2. How are they, isn't this season only 8 episodes?
Presumably, yeah.
That has barely gone anywhere. And what they have achieved is so boring, filler, just dragged out, inflated stuff. And it gets me angry because they've made such a boring show it's moving so slowly, and they've exchanged that for the great content and plot that they could have used from the books for this. Frustrating. And so Liandrin is particularly upset and she throws the pot. She's like, ah! And so they're actually really doubling, tripling, they're going full ball into making Liandrin actually care about the girls, having her, give her more of an arc. And it's like, this does not make sense for what Liandrin is supposed to do. Unless, either they're combining her with a lighter or they want to create far more conflict. They're trying to say, she still has the motivation she had in the book, but now she actually cares for the girls, and it's going to be so difficult for her to follow through with her motivations.
I don't know what they're doing with her anymore.
Yeah.
It's all over the place in this episode, and she's, talks about how she cares for Nynaeve and that she's basically mourning her loss.
Yes, that's why she lets Matt go. It's like, I could have been helping Nynaeve when I was stuck dealing with you. Basically.
You're Moraine's mess. I'm not doing her bidding anymore.
And in isolation, I actually this is an interesting kind of character arc. But again, someone who loves the books, they're exchanging the time they're giving to Liandrin of all people for stuff that should have been exploring what Rand is doing, what Matt is doing, what Perrin is doing, everything like that. They don't want to explore the main characters of the series. No, they're going to give an entire episode to fleshing out Liandrin of all people. She did not need much to achieve what she needed to in the show, and they set that up in season 1. I thought they set it up, okay, yeah, we know where Liandrin's going, but suddenly they've given a big, U-turn on this, and they're pushing Liandrin in a completely different direction, an unnecessary direction. So there's that. All right, so here is where Uno dies. I can't stand it, all right? And this is where, instead of look how cool Uno is. Everything that they do with Uno could have been a great building moment for Perrin, the main character, where Perrin is saying, we've got to do something. Uno sees the girls being captured, and he can't stand it. We've got to stop them. I'm like, a man's protective instinct to protect vulnerable women? Hell yeah, Uno, go on. But really, why isn't Perrin doing this? Why is Perrin just sitting there like a wet rag, like the last episode of season 1? And instead, the one who's actually got given backbone is a character you kill off. I was liking Uno. Uno was like, finally, a character I'm enjoying, and then you're robbing me of him. And I liked him from the series as well, and you robbed me of that as two, doubly robbed. And so this should have been an opportunity to build Perrin, and then Uno's like, yeah, let's go. And like, Uno should still be a secondary character to support Perrin. But instead, Perrin's just sitting there like a wet rag, doing nothing. Oh yeah, the pacifiers. Ugh. They're so out of place for me.
So all they're really supposed to have, apart from, whatever outfits they're given, is a plain dress and a collar.
And a collar.
That's it. And the woman behind is supposed to have a leash connecting to that collar attached to her wrist.
Yep. But instead they have the Damani with weird paint over her mouth, and the Suldam have a pacifier. Look, the neck thing is there, but they've gone way overboard with it. And they said, like, this is symbolic of women not being allowed to speak and being imprisoned. So, like, again, they've admitted that this edition of the pacifier was done for ideological reasons, to make a commentary on modern politics, not to adapt the source material. That's their priority, okay? That's the hallmark of this whole show. Take someone else's legacy, hijack it to push their own agenda. That's the forefront of the adaptation. How can we use this to say something about modern day politics? And front and center right here with the pacifier. I'm not making this up. They've said this. So, annoying.
So they capture these women, which is in line with what the Xian do.
And I'll try and avoid spoilers of the show. But look, see Uno, he's like, this ain't on. We're not putting up with this. Which is like, great, I'm liking it. And I would have considered it still a bit Deus Ex Machina cheap, but they did kind of hang a lantern on, build this up. Elias should have come in and saved him at this point. Wolves attack, just like an army of wolves. And then another great moment for Perrin. Perrin, that's when he starts to connect with the wolves, and the wolves' rage gets him, and actually have Perrin fight and kill someone for once. And you're starting, finally, it's taken too long. This should have happened in the book one. Perrin kills people because of the wolf rage, right? They still haven't done it, and we're in season 2. Come on! And you had a perfect opportunity here. Such an opportunity, you're willing to do it later on the episode to save Perrin. So do it to save Uno, so you still have this great character to work with, and you did get to, give the fans something that they like to see Uno continue through the series, and then have the building moment of Perrin of actually interacting with wolves and fighting back, army of wolves, Elias showing that he can control them and everything. But no, none of that. It's so obviously an opportunity, and it would have been so much better. Instead, they kill Uno. Just kill him. And Perrin stands there and watches. And not only that, Perrin and Inktar and the other Shinarans take a knee and make an oath to serve the Shonchen. Like, what should have happened is Perrin was saying no to the oath as well. And him and Uno and Inktar and all the Shinarans were getting ready to be executed, because no Shinaran worth his salt would have taken the oath. You might think Inktar, maybe. And I think, okay, Inktar, maybe. But Uno's the only one who's been true to the Shinaran standard here. And Perrin, they would have given Perrin some courage and backbone. They're desperate to make him look like a cowardly wet rag, don't you think?
Yeah, he was pretty useless through most of this. They messed up this whole section completely, because it's not only the execution of Uno, but that they have the noble woman speak to everybody, which she shouldn't do. And it'll carry on to one of the later scenes, but once people take the oath, they leave them be.
Exactly.
That's their bizarre thing that everybody comments on, is as long as you take the oath, they leave you alone, and they trust that you'll keep your oath, because not keeping your oath is unthinkable to them. And so they're supposed to just go, okay, you've taken the oath, we'll be back.
But they don't. They take Perrin with them, and it looked like the other everyone was captured as well. They just all locked up and said,
yes, because he's like, what about the others? Well, you can't help them when you're locked up.
Exactly.
So they're all taken. And
so they contradict that about the Shonchen. And the Shonchen are complex, and I really don't like the Shonchen, but that makes them great antagonists in the book as a result. But there is something interesting about the Shonchan, is that they're actually good governors. They give a decent amount of freedom and liberty to their people, except for one drastic exception.
Yes.
And that is, of course, you see him, the Suldam.
No, Suldam is the ones with the bracelet.
The controllers. And
the Damani are the ones with the leash,
Yeah. And so, like, Robert Jordan did that on purpose to make you conflicted. It's like, the Shonchan are actually doing really good things in terms of trade and government and all these things, probably better than a lot of the nations currently, except that they are an entire nation practicing a really oppressive slave trade, like unforgiving slave trade. And the way that they treat and do the slave trade, I loathe the and look, there are also other really negative things about the Shonchan, like the whole the government structure and the class system is also pretty dog crap as well. Even though they treat lower people, they give some freedoms, but if you talk the wrong way to their nobility, and so there's a lot of other crap that's really, I hate the Shonchan. Rand finally meets with Logain, and I mentioned this goes nowhere. That's basically what happens. Logain is like, oh, I know you. Yeah, you can channel, but I won't teach you how to channel unless you get me a bottle of wine. Like, would Logain, that felt a bit weird, odd. What was your impression about his ultimatum there?
Yeah, I was like, so you want wine from your home country and then you'll give answers to the one question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then Rand has to... They try and shoehorn, this is how Rand gets his fancy coat and interacts with the nobility to get the fancy wine, so he ends up going to a fancy ball. How? Like, just Selene magically is able to do it. But they don't explain how Selene gets them into this thing. Like, before, in the books, it works really well. Rand arrives with servants, an ogier, carrying a big box, and wearing a really fancy coat. So already that's like, he's got servants. He's arrived with... Selene wasn't with him when he arrived, actually. No, he was looking for Selene. He arrives looking for a beautiful woman. He's wearing this super fancy coat. Everyone thinks, this is a noble of some importance. Who is he? And that's what causes everyone to send him invitations, right? And there's a nod to something in the books where Rand, he doesn't want to play the game. And so to try and show everyone I'm not playing the game, he burns the first invitation he's sent in the fire. The Kyrianan look at that and read it that he was so insulted by someone so beneath him sending an invitation, he publicly burned it in front of everyone to make a statement when he was just trying to say, I don't want to go, leave me alone. And I love that in the book.
And he would just keep getting invitations until eventually it went further and further up the nobility. And he got invited to the two most powerful people in the country.
And
that's how he gets to this big ball.
Yeah, because all the nobility are thinking, because when he burns the letter, he must be really important. So a higher noble then invites him. He doesn't respond. It's like, is he more important? And then a higher noble is thinking, if I don't invite him, I could be insulting him. So they invite him, nothing. Right to the way it gets to the two most important people. And when he gets these letters, he freaks out. And Tom Maryland is there in the books by this point. He says, if you don't respond to these ones, they will kill you. So
you need to pick one.
Red's like, oh, crap.
So he sticks them in his pocket for later, and they come in handy later.
They come in handy because it turns out they actually need to go to one of the palaces because that's where one of the way gates are, and they need to go there. The book is structured so well, and it's such a fun progression, right? In the show, they just go to a ball because reasons. There's no justification. They're there.
For wine.
For wine. It's like, what a letdown. And then he's given an invitation at the ball, and which he throws into a little brazier fire as a little nod to something in the books. That's what they gave us versus this great build-up and story in the books. The contrast is sickeningly sad. It's just like, really? And so instead we get a contradictory bullcrap thing where they just go to a ball magically. They're there now, and then they get the wine and he leaves, and he eventually comes back, gives the wine to Logain, and Logain's like, you already know the answer, blah, blah, blah. And Rand's like, oh, I can learn nothing from you. And we achieve nothing from this whole thing. It takes a whole episode to get through. the relationship between him and Celine makes no bloody sense still. Nothing is explained or told why they're together. It basically seems like he rocked up, he was looking for a place to stay, he stayed in an inn, and the innkeeper owner decided to jump his bone because he's hot. Is that the depth that they have right here? Because that's about as far as we're given. Celine owns, she mentions that, something about that reveals she's the innkeeper. And by the way, again, Celine is supposed to be younger and honestly look more beautiful. Like, you needed to find one. They describe Celine as having perfect human beauty. I mean, I'm not saying the woman's ugly, all right? I'm just saying you needed to be very intentional about who you cast for this character. It's not fitting. Hey. So, sidetrack to the girls, and of course, they find out
Nynaeve didn't come back. Yeah.
And they're sad. And this is, again, just dragging out something that should have already been resolved. This is unnecessary.
Though I didn't mind Shiriam there, because it did portray her very much as she is in the books. She's caring, but strict as well, and no nonsense.
Matt is let free because
Leandrin is now sad that Nynaeve is gone, and I'm not wasting my time on Moraine's pet.
It's all your fault, basically.
Yeah.
They've only given the scenes to Matt to remind us he exists. Because he literally achieves nothing. Yeah, he connects with Min because they needed a way to force in Min. But, oh boy, sorry, this was one of the bigger crimes of this episode, and I should have mentioned it before we even got to the things. They make Matt look awful again. Like, they got a better actor for the character, and there are moments where he is a bit
almost Matt.
Almost Matt, sorry.
Yes.
And there are moments where he is a bit more Matt-like, a bit more lighthearted, right? So you might be thinking they're pushing in the right direction. Well, this episode just stabbed that in the heart because they make Matt look friggin' awful again, because they bring up, you betrayed them, you abandoned them, they didn't leave you, it was you that left them. So they drive that home to reinforce that Matt is a disgusting person. Then Matt has an opportunity to connect with Egwene. We'll get there chronologically. And you can guess what they do for him. And so they still want to assassinate his characters. Like the people making this hate Matt. And Matt is one of the most beloved characters. Isn't he one of your favorite?
Yes. Well, in the book he is.
In the books he is. It's like they're intentionally still trying to ruin his character. And the excuse in season 1, which I don't buy, was that because the actor left, they had to write him out of the series. The way they wrote him out of the season was dog crap, and they didn't need to. They already showed Matt sick on a bed. Then they do the healing and is still on the bed. And then you could have just cut that he wasn't well enough to leave with them through the Waygate and just edit him out of that scene. Instead, they intentionally have him abandon them at the Waygate. It's insane. Like, you went out of your way to assassinate that character, unneededly so, and you're doing it again in this bloody episode. Like, who would like this character watching this show without the context of the books? Like, nothing is given to you like him. He's a scumbag. He's a thief who abandons his friend. And by the way, he's still a thief. He still robs in this episode, right? And he has an opportunity to redeem himself even a little bit here, and he gives up again. It's like they're only keeping him in this series because he's a character in the books. We got to keep it, but we don't like him, so we'll make you hate him regardless. Egwene meets with
Leandrin, and Leandrin's mourning Nynaeve, and
this is another one of those scenes where they purposely give to Leandrin to really emphasize how much she cared about Nynaeve. It's just like, this is not Leandrin at all.
She's like, I believed in her.
It's like,
really?
Leandrin hated each one of the girls. Didn't she particularly hate Nynaeve because she was a wilder?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I think I've been far too lenient on their depiction of Leandrin here, because I thought, like, well, they're trying to combine it with Elida. This does not come across as Elida or Leandrin. This is just a new character completely. Like, they've abandoned who Leandrin is supposed to be to then, like, the most offensive thing about this is that they're spending so much time on her when they're ignoring Rand and Matt and the actual characters we want to see and care about. They are, they think they can do better than the books, so they're injecting their own stories. Like, they were thinking, like, oh, I want my own character and story in this. Who can I do? I know there's not much about Leandrin. I'm going to make a whole story about Leandrin, and it's going to be so great, and people will see that I'm such a good writer by making all this story, stuff like that.
At this point in this book, the Aes Sedai we see the most is Varen, and she's supposed to be with Perrin and Matt and Rand.
Mm-hmm.
She's the Aes Sedai we should be spending time with right now, the brown sister.
Yes, exactly. And by the way, like, Liandrin is written as a character to be despised in the books, and as that character, she's effective, right? But as a result, no one likes Liandrin. No one came into wanting to see the Wheel of Time series adaptation thinking, I really hope they expand Liandrin as a character, right? You're just robbing us of what we wanted to see. This is the ball scene with Rand and a shadow in comparison of what we wanted to see and what we could have seen. Okay, that's him with the little invitation, and he just casually throws it in the fire. And like their attempt at trying to show the Kyrian kind of subtlety in politics is that suddenly now the call for the Hunt of the Horn is a means to drain the foregate of unwanted refugees. The Hunt of the Horn, which is like a grand tradition that everyone around the world, you know, well, not everyone, but a lot of people around the world will get involved in and stuff. Now it's a Kyriendan plot to just get rid of people.
And so they've organised this thing all the way over in Ilian, down to the Horn, just so that they can lose their rebel.
Yeah. But that sickens Rand in this, is like, these people are pathetic. I want nothing part of them. By the way, I actually like his coat here. I think it could be a bit longer, but in terms of the embroidery on the cuffs and collar, yeah.
The length is fine.
And it's herons. You will notice that they've got herons all around. That's a great looking coat. And that should be what Rand is, Rand, in the beginning of the book, book 2, Moraine burns all of Rand's normal clothes and leaves him with nothing apart from these fine coats. And Rand doesn't want to wear them, but he's got nothing else to wear and is stuck with them. And he doesn't have real good opportunity to change. And when he finally gets to Kyrian, he's kind of stuck because Huron, they've ripped Huron out of the book. They've given the sniffing ability to Perrin, which is this weird warped ability of him seeing the past now instead of actually just smelling violence, right? Huron was had a really important role to play with Rand because Huron needed leadership. He's a dedicated and a great servant, and is there to serve his lord, the Shienarans and stuff like that. And he takes pride in what he's doing. He's a sniffer and is going to do a good job for his lord. That's the way he's raised, that's who he is. And so when he's stuck with no one else but Rand, he ends up looking to Rand as the leader he needs for direction. He has no, because Huron gets stuck with Rand in the other world through the portal stone, and he doesn't know how to get back. And he needs something solid to hold on to give him reassurance that get him back. And so who does he? He clings onto Rand. Is like, my lord, you'll save us, won't you, my lord? Rand is like, don't call me a lord. Of course, my lord. Yes, but you'll save us, right? and so Rand, it's actually really important because Rand has to become a great leader, and the catalyst kind of interaction which helps him realize he has the capacity to be a great leader is the interaction with Huron. It's so pivotal and important, right? And by the end of it, he starts to realize, they think I'm a lord. They need some leadership. So I guess I'll just keep wearing the coat, and he just starts to go along with it, which is so important to his character. What reason are they going to give him to just keep wearing the coats now? And has he gone through anything to realize that he can be a great leader and that people rely on him for leadership? There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Instead, he's just at a party and is wearing a coat because Selene just wanted to give him a coat. Comes back to Loghain, and Loghain's like, yeah, I'm crazy. You already know the answer. And he gets nothing out of it.
It's like, because Rand wanted to know how to control the power, and he's like, you can't. That's your answer. You can't do it.
Yep, you can't stop either. It's just going to come more and more. And so he's upset. He leaves. So, all right, this is the scene where they assassinate Matt again.
Matt leaves the room, forgetting the fact that he's got a roommate next door that he could just move the cupboard for and say, let's go. That should have been his first instinct.
First thing, exactly. I actually have a note of that. I'm so glad you reminded me. Because, Matt has already left the room. It's like, stuff Min. They spent the whole last episode of him removing a stone from the wall
bonding
between
and drinking
his cell and Min. And so we know that Min can get into his room. And he's just like, stuff Min. I forgot about her. And supposedly he's going to see Egwene.
Because
who's
Leandrin's
sad.
like, Egwene's somewhere in the tower and she might need you. Maybe you can do some good.
Yeah, and again, out of character for Leandrin to do something thoughtful for Egwene. And so Matt has an opportunity to be Matt.
And she is crying.
She's
and instead of, him panicking or going, I don't know how to help, and sitting there and like, nervously patting her back or something. No. He turns around and walks away.
Turns around, reinforcing that it was an intentional betrayal at the end of season 1. He's a coward who's not going to be there. And this, one thing that was the hallmark of Matt's character is that he will always be there for his friends. He will travel across the world when he hears they're in trouble just to help them out and protect them and save them. That is Matt's character. And he goes through his life trying to deny I'm not a bloody hero. Heroes get themselves killed. Forget that. What? Egwene's in trouble? We gotta go help her. I'm not a hero. Shut up. That's Matt! And it's this charming sense of contradiction and unreliable narration where it's like, I'm not a hero, yet he acts extremely heroically. He is a noble, good character. What Matt does here is such a portrayal of his character. I said in our episode 1 review, have they even read the books? Do they know these characters? The level of contradiction and betrayal of what Matt is being depicted here is insane. This is far from just cutting things from their story because they don't have enough room, or making slight changes that are still in line with the story, like the second vision of Nynaeve in the Archers, right? Where it's necessary to change the condensed thing. No. This is not only a change of something completely different, it's a complete reversal. This is the opposite of what this character would do. And it's disgusting. Matt is a beloved character, and they are just taking a steaming dump on him in front of the audience and fans that love him. Look at this. And then he just leaves. It's like, and Nynaeve looks and is not there.
Egwene.
Oh, sorry, Egwene, yeah. this flipping show. Oh, and then now he remembers Min. It's like, you want to get out of here? It's like, well, you're just going to leave?
No, he doesn't even say, do you want to get out of here? He moves the thing, says, come in here. And he sits down. Right. And she notices the door's open. She's like, the door's open, let's go. And he's like, where do I go?
Yeah.
Anywhere else.
Matt has no direction at all. And Min's like, well, I'll come. So sad. Matt was given a really good mission to leave the tower in the books. It was to deliver a letter to Elaine's mother to let her know that she's not in trouble, basically. But of course, that was actually in book 3, because in book 2, Matt wasn't even at the tower. Matt was with Rand searching for the dagger. And that should be Matt getting free. He should have gotten free he shouldn't have even been imprisoned. At the beginning of this season, he should have realized the Red Ajah were after him, and he escapes them, and he then wants to return to his friends to help them out because he knows they're going to be in trouble. Returning Matt to his original character and have him meet up with Rand and Perrin as they're trying to find the horn. What? The horn? Paranthane has the dagger, and he needs the dagger to save his life because the connection and all that stuff, because the healing didn't properly work in season 1. They're basically saying the healing did work in season 1, by the way. That's his purpose. He would have direction, a real solid goal. Here, he has nowhere to go. That's this show. This show has, the characters don't know what they're doing. So why do we give a crap? And the answer is we don't, because we're not given a reason to give a crap. Most of the main characters are just selfish, stupid people, okay? And the only likable characters, you killed one off, Uno, and Elaine has barely been in here enough to actually like her. Everyone else, I don't give a crap. So anyway, there, that's that. Here's where Perrin gets freed by the wolves because, can't have Perrin die.
For some reason, the Xian Chen decided to take them captive instead of just letting them loose once they swore.
Mm-hmm. And the Forsaken guy is there. I forget which Forsaken he is.
Beelzemon, I think he was calling himself.
He poses as the Dark One.
Yes.
But I can't, is it a Chainmail or?
Well, they mention a Chainmail earlier. Moraine does. And say that it was a Chainmail that they freed and then he would free others. So that's a Chainmail.
Okay. So he is basically saying the more wolf you become, the more evil you become, and I really want to see it. And okay, I don't mind that necessarily. He would be appearing in a dream though, like appearing in person. It seems weird. But they're constantly teasing this rage Perrin has inside him and is still just pathetically cowardly and weak. You know, he let the women get captured. It was only Uno who had the balls to try and do something about it. And then he took the oath like a coward and
have Chainmail friendlier than Matt
yes.
is ridiculous.
Like Chainmail's like,
would you like
you
some
will
water?
not disobey me, worm. That's him in the books, right?
Yeah.
Here he's like,
would you like some water? You must be thirsty.
yeah, you're thirsty. Here's some water.
Oh dear.
Oh, and so yeah, wolf attack. Perrin gets free. They could have done it before.
Gets freed because the Xianshan leave the key to the cuffs hanging on the wall inside the...
The key to his chains are hanging next to the door. And ready? It's like, you need to get free. Where will the key be? Just hang on the... It's right there next to the door. Perrin, surely you could have reached, like, if you couldn't pick something, knock something off, but like, you're on a wooden bench. What if you like broke off a bit of wood that had a bit of reach? This show is dumb. So then Perrin gets free with Elias and they're going to now fight. Finally, will they? I shouldn't really be trusting that they'll do this. That Perrin will start to uncover his wolf side.
So yeah, now we're back with Matt and Min.
Yep, and they're stealing food.
Yeah, they're stealing supplies, horses, everything. And she's like, oh, just one more thing.
Yeah, Matt was not a thief. If he needed something, he would gamble to get money and then actually pay
buy
for
stuff. Yeah.
And then they have a reveal. This was all a plot. Min goes to see and she sees Leandrin, and it's all a part of Leandrin's plot to let them both free. For some reason, and they intentionally haven't revealed what it is, so let's see what it'll be in the later episodes. But Min is working for Leandrin.
Yeah.
And this, in terms of characters that bear I'm talking zero resemblance to their book counterpart, Min is like front and center, that like unrecognizable. This isn't Min. This is just like change the name. It's a new weird character. That's it. And there. And so this character is doing something. Rand comes back and he likes rough sex apparently because he's in the mood.
And so now he's in a different coat, of course, because he wore a blow coat to go see.
Yes. Actually,
Logain.
I think they're hinting that this is a dream.
I think they are.
Yeah, because he wakes up after that. He starts thinking he's channeling while he's getting it on. And then he wakes up not in the coat, so that was a dream.
Yes.
But then he channels accidentally after waking up and sets the building on fire. And he has to escape. Who cares? Rand, yes, there should be a struggle between him and channeling. You could have cut that into, this entire thing at Kyrian and Logain was pointless. And jumped in. It's so useless and pointless. This is Egwene trying to restart the pillars, can't do it. Elaine arrives, and they're like, let's just stay here because it's sad. Remember, Nynaeve is still trapped in that other world. They've dragged it on heaps and heaps. Here's Nynaeve in that world. And now they kind of have somewhat she's married to Lan and she has a daughter. And,
Perrin and Matt are kind and nice and, the idyllic versions of them, apparently.
And this is where the art should appear because now it's actually, she wouldn't want to leave. It's the perfect world. After they all get killed and the daughter needs protection and safety.
That's when the arch appears.
The arch appears then.
Matt's dead, Perrin's dead, Lan's dead.
And so the arch is literally an escape. It's not a challenge. It's not a question. Of course you'll run through the arch now because you want to protect your daughter. So it's not the question of choosing the arch over a temptation or something that's hard to leave. It's not a choice at all. Of course she leaves. And the arch appears for no reason at all. It just appears. In the books, Nynaeve forcefully makes it appear because it should never appear again. She is the one that forces it. Why is it appearing now? No reason is given. Deus ex machina. Oh, we said it'll only appear once, but here it is a second time.
And it says it again, the escape will appear just once or whatever it says. And there we go, second time.
Such nonsense, right? And then, she comes out. She's like, they're like, oh, Nynaeve, she's back alive. And that's it. That's it. That's the episode. Pointless! pointless. Barely anything was achieved. Such useless, insulting crap compared to how great the books are. And this is what we have. There we go.
So please just read the books instead.
Yes. And even if you didn't read the books, this episode is just boring. Barely anything was achieved. Yes, but some was achieved. Barely anything. That's my point. And like, the characters started in this series. At the beginning of episode 1, the girl's fluffing around in Tarvalin. We don't even see Rand, but he was fluffing around in Kyrian. Perrin is fluffing around following the Horn. And Matt was locked up in a prison. The only change from that is Matt is now not in the prison, but he hasn't gone anywhere. 3 episodes, and this is where we're at. And by the way, Moraine is walking around doing random crap with no real purpose or direction that we are given.
Yeah, she's just left Lan and off doing her own thing, apparently.
3 episodes, and that's what's been achieved, okay? Boring as anything. The characters are mostly unlikable, and then it is speckled with truly remarkable bits of nonsense. So even divorced from the books, this show is lousy. I'm not saying it's the worst thing I've ever seen, but it is not good on its own. And when you compare it to the books, it becomes an absolute atrocious desecration of a great series and a man's legacy. That's where we're at the moment. Any other thoughts, my dear?
No, we just...
We're not giving up. We'll do every single episode.
We will.
And we hope to see
you.
Yes, we will. And we're traveling. We do our best with what we have available, but still hope to see you on those next episodes. So until then, stay on watch.